Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools, and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, wellbeing, and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal wellbeing. Welcome to the 292nd episode of the award-winning Diverse Minds podcast, and welcome to November. Last week was Stress Awareness Day, so I wanted this episode to link to stress, money, and mental health. Don't forget, the podcast is now fortnightly, but if you're missing weekly content, you have 6 years worth of episodes to reflect back on. And if you want my handy guide that lists the episodes with a clickable link, you can get it at bit.ly/DMPG23. This year's theme for Stress Awareness Day was optimizing employee wellbeing through strategic stress management. Now, there are lots of resources I have on the Diverse Minds website on stress, including my deep dive, the article, What Makes Stress So Alluring? And that's diverseminds.co.uk/what-makes-stress-so-alluring. But if you just go on the website and pop that in, you'll see lots of resources there. Despite the fact that the theme for Stress Awareness Day is all about optimizing employee wellbeing through strategic stress management, I think that what's on most people's mind at the moment is stress, money, resources, affordability of daily life, and of course, the impact this has on mental wellbeing. And according to the Money and Mental Health Institute, mental health and money problems are often intricately linked, as most of us will know. Their research shows that in England alone, over 1.5 million people are experiencing both debt and mental health problems, that financial difficulties are a common cause of stress and anxiety. Stigma around debt can mean that people struggle to ask for help and become isolated. The impact on people's mental health can be particularly severe if they resort to cutting back on essentials such as heating and eating, which is happening all the time, or if creditors are aggressive or insensitive when collecting debts. Financial difficulty drastically reduces recovery rates for common mental health conditions, and of course it will. Even if someone doesn't have a diagnosed mental health condition, stress around money and finance and resources can result in mental ill health. People with depression and problem debt are 4.2 times more likely to still have depression 18 months later than people without financial difficulties. And people in problem debt are 3 times as likely to have thought about suicide in the past year. We also know that redundancy, particularly for men for a month or over, increases suicidal ideation and the risk of acting on that ideation. Typically, a range of social issues, life events, cognitive personality factors are combined. However, there's a strong link between problem debt and suicide, and more than 100,000 people in England, so that's just England alone, attempt suicide while in problem debt every year. The income gap for those of us with mental health conditions is significant. So people who have diagnosed mental health condition have a median gross annual income of £2,376 less than people without mental health problems. So those are just some of the key stats from the Money and Mental Health Institute, and the link is in the show notes if you want to learn more. And also the Bank of England's measure of inflation, CPI, is expected to peak now, 3.7%, before falling to 2% by 2027. And we don't know if that's going to happen. That's a prediction. And of course, as everyday costs rise, it's important that we have good organisations that can lift us up and support us through financial wellbeing. The CIPD, Chartered Institute of Professional Development, have a really great research and insights. So it's thought leadership about employers and financial wellbeing. Again, the link is in the show notes, so I recommend you have a look at that. And it showed that their research showed that 44% of employers have either signed up to the voluntary living wage or pay at or above that amount because they see it as the quote unquote right thing to do. Other organizations, which equated to 21% who completed the survey, did so to improve productivity, being conscious of the impact that poor financial wellbeing can have on business. Money and struggling financially, surrounded by shame and stigma, as we know. We don't necessarily get to speak about money messages we have received as we grow up. Sometimes we don't know them, and it takes some time to work them out. So talking about money publicly at work can be a huge no-no. People have worked in different organizations. It depends on your generation. It depends on your journey. But especially when we feel that everyone else has it together, this can become increasingly difficult. So in the CIPD's financial wellbeing report, this is an evidence review that found that money worries can cause absences. Of course, that makes sense, either because people need time off work to deal with worries or because they are too stressed to work. Of course, it can also cause presenteeism, where people are coming into work, but with these heavy worries on their mind, they're not able to fully focus. And in February 2025, a survey of around 5,000 employees commissioned for the CIPD Good Work Index found that 31% said that money worries had negatively affected their work performance. And among staff earning less than £40,000 a year, 37% reported this, and even 22% of those earning 60,000 and over said the same thing. Now, of course, this is going to vary on location in the country, whether you have how many dependents you have. There are a lot of factors, how high the mortgage is, all of these things, how much you're paying for childcare. So it's quite difficult to get that granulated information. But the survey also revealed the ways money worries affected performance, with 19% of all employees said that they had lost sleep due to worrying. 15% said it had caused health problems such as stress, and 13% said that these worries made it hard to concentrate or make decisions at work. And young workers and those earning less than £40,000 a year were more likely to report this. Meanwhile, 30% of employees said they could not cope with an unexpected bill of £300, and this rises to 52% among those earning less than £20,000 a year, which makes complete sense. Especially true for the sectors of hospitality, 43% responded this way, or retail, 41% of workers. And on top of this, most people employed in retail and hospitality do not think their pay is enough to help them save for retirement, which makes complete sense. Only 35% of those paid less than $20,000 a year said that they're keeping up with their bills and credit commitments without any problems. This is essentially the same as reported in 2024, despite the 9.8% increase in the national living wage last April. And that is taken, just to reiterate, from the CIPD Views and Insights, Thought Leadership, Insight, Action, Employee, Financial Wellbeing. So I really hope you're enjoying the content of the show and want to keep up to date. If you do, then why not join my newsletter? When you join my mailing list, you'll receive my white paper on inclusive language and mental health at work. And that link is bit.ly/ILMHCK. So what can workplaces do? What should they be doing? What can they be doing to alleviate some of the stress that is caused by financial uncertainty? I think one of the things is that to acknowledge that not everyone is at the same place. I think often there are assumptions made of, particularly in desk jobs, you climb up the ladder, or there's opportunities and you're quite well to do, or you're in an okay space and people can just tick along. But I don't think that is the case. I think especially with strikes going on at the moment in a number of organisations, the British Library is currently having a strike, and I walked past the picket and had a chat to some of the individuals on there. Many universities have been on strike. UCU has been balloting. And I remember when I was in a sort of top level university meeting not that long ago, when there was one of the first rounds of strike action, someone saying, "Oh, well, staff shouldn't be given advances because the university is not a bank." And I just thought that was so heartless and cruel. And of course, when people go on strike, there is a financial penalty that they have to pay, but they're doing it for a particular reason. So I also think having board members and senior leaders who understand this and can see things from other people's perspective is crucial. So there are quite a few practical things that can be done, some more easily than others. But so let's start with the short term, or maybe easier to put into place potentially, depending on the organization. Now, of course, some things are going to be much easier to do if it's a large organization or a large to medium organization. If it's a small organization, this might be very tricky to do, particularly organizations that rely on grant funding. That does add an extra layer of complexity. However, loans and advances are possible. Interest-free loans or salary advances is to help with immediate financial crises, but also consider cancelling or looking at repayment options on if there are any existing company loans, for example, like season loan tickets. That's sometimes possible, that's sometimes not. Some organizations have one-off payments to provide discretionary one-off hardship payments. Much like we had as students, some of us, there were hardship funds. Can you arrange something like that for staff? Clear communication that they are not part of the regular salary. And I know there's going to be huge pushback when I say this, because also organizations will say, well, we have increasing energy costs, we have increasing fuel costs, we have increasing NI costs, we have increasing building costs. The list is endless. So it does, depending on the type of organization, it does have to be looked at. And I also know that councils may not be able to do this given the difficult positions that councils are in. But over time, that could be something. So employees have the option to work paid overtime. That's often easier for staff at lower levels sometimes or in manual roles. So where feasible to earn extra income. And another thing is to allow employees to sell back unused holiday. So those of us that want more holiday, we had the option to buy more holiday. Those of people who cannot or aren't in a position to take that holiday, which is really sad. And I know there's a toss up here, isn't there, between people taking their leave to recuperate for their well-being, but if there's financial stress, being able to sell back unused holiday, which I actually think is a really great idea, and should in theory be quite straightforward. Again, this will depend on your payroll processes and how easy that is to do. Then in terms of longer term strategies, financial education, and this is not to patronize anyone. And I think that I do think it's important to think about workshops, resources, or access to platforms to help employees improve their financial literacy, budgeting and saving skills. But often I think to go deeper for me is around coaches and people that can support drop-in advice, face-to-face advice, people that are not linked with the organization that employees can have a conversation with, or signposting to debt counseling services outside an organization. And that could be a really easy, quick thing to do. Citizens Advice Bureau have debt, depending on where you are in the country, have debt advice, or can signpost you to other places. Salary sacrifice schemes. So for childcare, pensions, most places do have it for pensions, cycle to work season ticket loan schemes, all those sorts of things. Salary sacrifice can help chunk it down because people may not have the initial money to pay the full costs. Employee benefits. So if you have lots of portals, a lot of organizations that do this, that you can then log on and you get reduced costs in terms of grocery shops, utilities, memberships. If you can, free or subsidized meals. Again, if it's a really small organization, it's not always possible. But is there kind of some buddy scheme that you could instigate with a local supermarket to get reduced food, or promote apps like Olio or Good to Go that help people find food that's about to be thrown away for very low cost. Hybrid working is a great one to reduce travel costs. And another idea that I heard recently that managers are doing, which I think is really helpful, is to look at people's working hours. So if they have to come into work, they can come in at 10 or 10:30 to avoid peak times, especially when they are struggling financially. And of course, pay and progression in terms of ensuring any gender gaps, ethnicity gaps, disability gaps in terms of pay, and that progression is clearly communicated. And if progression isn't possible in your organization, how you can support people with their progression, giving positive references, having those discussions and managing someone's career. And then there's the organizational side, the organizational culture and support. So what's the way of starting conversations around culture, of talking about financial well-being being the way in which someone has enough money to live comfortably, come into work, they're not in work poverty, their work is actually paying for them to be able to cover their bills and also have some money to do what they want to do. And I think part of this is training managers to handle these conversations with sensitivity, but to be able to ask the questions. As I said, money coaches, advisors and drop-ins, I think that's really, really useful. Signposting to external help. So that's a cultural thing that can be done quite quickly. If you're big enough to have an employee assistance program, so events, working with your employee assistance team to design and develop something for your organization. And that could be awareness events, that could be workshops, that could be any number of things. It could be setting up a separate hotline for maybe 2 or 3 days to talk about money things, around, wellness at work, or you could link it to a national campaign. And that could also include directing people to financial advice services such as National Debtline or Money Helper. And also to integrate the conversation around financial wellbeing into wider wellbeing programs. So, when we do mental health first aid, if you do that, if you're doing any physical activities, looking at the financial wellbeing, because yes, it's lovely to be able to join a gym, but not many people aren't in that position. So all of those things. And then again, communicating all these offers to employees, communication is absolutely essential. So briefing line managers, so they know how to tell people. It could be at the beginning of a team meeting, so no one feels targeted, but regularly communicating to colleagues, making things really accessible. So it could be in terms of how it's communicated in English, but do you want to have it available in many languages? Digital capabilities, can you put that on the screens? If it's only available online, online, that's not really helpful. So there are many staff that don't have a desk. So is there a phone line or a text line or a WhatsApp? Because I think people find WhatsApp very accessible, that employees can use. And if you have any contractor or agency staff, particularly staff catering or hospitality staff, cleaning staff are often outsourced, but how can you extend this offer to them to ensure that everyone can access the support? Because this group of staff I've definitely overlooked. And the Money and Mental Health Institute have a really great best practice checklist, and I've included that in the show notes. And also don't forget, as always, culture and the part that culture plays in this. So in episode 112, Cultural Money Stories and Mindsets, I speak to the brilliant financial wellbeing coach. She's absolutely incredible, Talia Loderick. So do check out that episode. And also episode 179, Poverty and Mental Health. And that was with Erin Norton-Brown, who used to be the key person leading Minds campaign on poverty and mental health. And that episode is called Campaigning Against Poverty to Support Mental Health. So some really good tips and insights from those brilliant people. So because stress, money and mental health is a real challenge for many people, workplaces have a role to play in supporting staff with their financial well-being. Of course, we know that everyone's story and journey is different, but there are things that can be put in place to support people, and constant dialogue about financial well-being and reviewing what's in place is an essential part of the programme. So creating an environment where financial well-being is integrated into overall well-being is beneficial for individual employees, but also boosts morale, engagement and retention across an organisation. So if you're looking to foster a positive well-being culture and would like guidance on creating strategies tailored to your team's needs, then of course Diverse Minds is here for you. So reach out to me to explore our training, consultancy and coaching services designed to build healthy, resilient workplace culture. You can email me on Layla, that's Leyla @diverseminds.co.uk. And I really hope you've enjoyed the show. And if you have, why not leave me a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast from. You can also leave me an anonymous voice note at SpeakPipe, SPKPDMP, bit.ly/SPKPDMP. And don't forget my TEDx talk about the connection between culture, race, and mental health in the workplace, bit.ly/TEDx Wolves, WOLVESLO. So I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and in the next episode I'll be talking about why getting rid of your DEI initiatives is not cost saving or beneficial. So until then, take care everyone, and bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.